I want to tell you a story, not about a hero, not about a villain, but about a man who became both. Fulgencio Batista was born in 1901, in a small town called Baines, in the eastern part of Cuba. He was poor, like many others. His parents worked on sugar plantations. No silver spoon, no privilege. Just sweat and survival. He joined the army young, became a stenographer. He wasn't a fighter at first. He was a listener, an observer, someone who watched the powerful and learned their language. Then, in 1933, Cuba erupted. Protests, strikes, military unrest. The president at the time, Gerardo Machado, was hated. Students, workers, and soldiers wanted him gone. Batista was a sergeant then. A nobody. But he led the sergeant's revolt, a mutiny. And overnight, he wasn't a nobody anymore. He wasn't even just a soldier. He was the power behind the throne. He put presidents into office, and removed them when they disobeyed. He became the kingmaker. Cuba was his chessboard, and he controlled every move from the shadows. In 1940, he stepped out of the shadows and ran for president. And guess what? He won. Legally. Democratically. People still had hope in him. He promised reforms, a new constitution, a better life. And for a brief moment, just a moment, Batista looked like the man who would modernize Cuba. But power doesn't purify. It corrupts. Fast forward to 1952. Batista had been out of office for years. He'd lived in Florida, played golf, made friends in Washington. He missed the throne. So he came back to Cuba, not to run. No. He staged a coup. One morning, people woke up and Batista was back in power. Just like that. No votes. No permission. Now, this time, he wasn't pretending to be a reformer. He was different. Hardened. Wealthier. And he had new friends, in very dark places. That's where the American Mafia comes in. You see, while Cubans struggled, Havana was turning into a playground, not for them, but for the rich, the corrupt, the dangerous. The city became Las Vegas before Las Vegas. Glittering casinos. Opulent hotels. Smoke-filled cabarets. Girls. Drugs. Guns. And money. So much money. At the center of it all, Maya Lansky. A Jewish-American gangster. Soft-spoken. Brilliant. Dangerous. He and Batista became partners in crime, literally. Lansky promised Batista millions. Batista gave him access. No laws. No questions. No limits. They carved up Havana. Casino licenses were handed out like candy. Batista took a cut of every table, every show, every girl, every deal. If you wanted to open a hotel in Havana, you paid Batista, cash, up front. They called it a gift. And the Americans? The US government? They looked the other way. Why? Because Batista was anti-communist. That was all that mattered during the Cold War. You could be corrupt, brutal, a tyrant, as long as you weren't red. But behind the lights, behind the glamour, something was rotting. The Cuban people. They were watching. They were hurting. The farms were neglected. Schools were poor. Jobs were scarce. Batista's army tortured dissenters. The prisons overflowed. The streets whispered rebellion. And in the mountains, a storm was gathering. In 1956, a small yacht called Granma arrived on Cuba's shores. On board, Fidel Castro, Che Guevara, and 80 men. Most of them were killed almost immediately, but the survivors, including Castro and Che, fled to the Sierra Maestra Mountains. From there, they began to build something Batista never expected, a revolution. At first, no one took them seriously. How could a group of bearded idealists beat Batista's army? But the people believed. They were desperate. Teachers, farmers, young students. They joined. They fought. They died. And slowly, town by town, province by province, Batista started losing his grip. He responded the only way he knew how: violence. His forces killed civilians, bombed villages, executed suspected rebels in public squares. But each bullet Batista fired only grew Castro's legend. Meanwhile, the world began to watch. American journalists went into the mountains and came back with stories of a brutal dictator and a charismatic rebel. The US, once Batista's biggest backer, started to back away. They stopped sending him weapons. Public opinion turned. And Batista? He grew paranoid. He surrounded himself with yes men. Drank more. Trusted no one. On New Year's Eve, 1958, Batista held a lavish party at Havana's country club. Champagne. Laughter. Dancing. But just hours later, he fled the country with his family and $300 million. He boarded a plane to the Dominican Republic. Then Spain. He never returned. Fidel Castro marched into Havana on January 1, 1959. The streets exploded with joy. The dictator was gone. The casinos shut down. The brothels were raided. The Mafia lost its empire. Cuba belonged to Cubans again, or so they thought. Batista died in exile in Spain, in 1973. Few mourned him. Some forgot him. But Havana never did. If you walk the streets of old Havana today, you'll still see the ruins of that glittering underworld. Crumbling casinos. Empty hotels. Silent stages. Ghosts of a time when one man sold a nation's soul for power. Batista didn't just lose to Castro. He lost to history. Because you can build an empire on blood and money, but not forever. Not when the people remember. He ruled with iron and gold. Danced with gangsters in silk suits. And sold Havana's soul for a seat at the table of kings. But when the people rose, and the mountains spoke, not even his millions could shield him from the truth. Fulgencio Batista didn't fall because of Fidel. He fell because Cuba remembered who it belonged to. Empires built on casinos and blood never last. And in the end, the man who once owned Havana died a ghost, far from home. History never forgets. And neither should we. Gracias, Cuba. If you thought that was deep, wait until you see what came next. Subscribe, share, and watch the next untold story.